What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another video on my channel. Today we have another big NHL contract extension. This time it is Hutson of the Montreal Canadiens signing for a surprising contract figure. We have to get into it today, so let's talk about it. Before we get into the video, if you could drop a like, drop a comment at the end of the video, let me know your thoughts on the contract and on my take on it. And drop a subscription. As always, it really helps the channel and boosts up me in the algorithm. I really appreciate that. So let's get right into it. The newest paid player in the NHL is Hutson, who signs an 8-year, $70.8 million extension. Puts it at just under $9 million a season, around $8.8 million a year. It's a lot of money, but is it worth it? Let's talk about it. To be completely honest, me and a lot of other people have this opinion that this is actually an underpayment. We look at players that have signed similar deals in the past few weeks, including Jackson Lacombe and Luke Hughes, two players whom one of my last videos where I was grading contracts, I actually gave a high rating to both those deals because I think these are two young defensemen who are very much relied upon on their team. And they make a big impact on both offense and defense. And therefore, them both getting paid $9 million a year is reasonable, especially given the fact they're both long-term extensions, 7 and 8 years. So, Hutson signs an 8-year deal for less AAV than those two. It must be a steal, right? Well, perhaps actually not that simple. Hutson is now the second highest paid defenseman on the Montreal Canadiens behind Noah Dobson, who obviously they picked up in this offseason. Now, what does that say about the general management and the overall organization when it comes to paying Hutson? Did they ask him to take a pay cut? Did Hutson and his agent not expect enough money in this deal? Or are they valued as the second best defenseman on this team? When we see the contracts of Luke Hughes and Jackson Lacombe, they are both by far the highest paid defensemen on their team when it goes to going forward. I know Luke Hughes is somewhat similar to Dougie Hamilton in the meantime, but the point is, in a couple of years, that contract is going to be blown out the water. So it goes to show these are true number one defensemen on their team. Now, why would Montreal not pay Hutson like a true number one defenseman on their team? Do they have more faith in Dobson than they have in Hutson? And if so, why would they think this way? Both Dobson and Hutson are both somewhat known as offensive defensemen, especially the latter, with Hutson being really a quite one-dimensional player at this point in his career. Yes, he can play defensive minutes, and he plays big minutes for the Montreal Canadiens, even just being a sophomore and being a rookie last season. But Noah Dobson has a bit more experience, he has a bit more years under his belt, and maybe they have a bit more trust in his defensive game. We know that Hutson's analytics on defense are not very good. I'll pull up a picture here. They're pretty lackluster, and not to say that in these next 8-9 years he can't develop a great defensive game. But maybe they just don't believe that he'll be as elite of a defenseman going forward as someone like Noah Dobson or even like Jackson Lacombe or Luke Hughes. My initial reaction to this contract was, wow, what a steal. This is the Calder winner, a guy put up over 60 points in his rookie season. He's going to be a 60-plus point player probably every season of his career, if I had to guess, because he is such an elite offensively gifted player. We see the offensive work he puts in. His edge work is excellent. His head fakes and all of that. People kind of joke around with him, but it is a very valuable asset. He's a very good player, but like I said, his defensive work, it needs to be improved on. But then again, this is a long-term contract and he has lots of time. I think back to Quinn Hughes, who was an amazing offensive defenseman at the start of his career, as he obviously still is. But he did a lot of work over those years to improve his defensive game. And now he is truly an amazing two-way defenseman. Hutson can be the same thing. So if that's the case, this contract could be an absolute steal. But the fact they didn't pay him as much as Noah Dobson makes me think that Montreal might have a hierarchy when it comes to their defensemen. Hutson will be number one power play quarterback, don't get me wrong. But there's got to be a reason why he got paid less than Dobson. I think most of us imagine that Hutson would get $10+ million a year at average annual value. I think that is a no-brainer. So the fact they're paying him less makes me think that there's either something they know that we don't, or it's just a genuinely interesting case of why he's getting paid less than Dobson, and no one really knows the answer to that. I think part of the concern is what I said before when it comes to the defensive game. Hutson put up 66 points last season in his rookie year, which is obviously great. And it was obviously on a borderline playoff team in the Habs. It wasn't like a first in the division kind of team. But he was a -2. It goes to show how many goals he's letting in on his side of the ice. And obviously it's understandable because he's matched up against a lot of good opponents. He's one of the best defensemen in Montreal, and therefore he's logging a lot of minutes. But it goes to show that with all those points and still being a minus, it's very hard to justify him being one of the best two-way defensemen in the league. He's definitely not at this point. From what I understand, maybe the Montreal Canadiens are seeing a 5'9" offensive defenseman and they're trying to play it a little bit conservative. We know that this has happened before. There's been players who have shown great offensive ability and they've yet to truly show their full potential on both sides of the ice. I think regardless, Leighton Hutson is a positive asset for any team. I think he is such a good offensively gifted player, and that can't be taught, out of nowhere. For my team, I would take a 66-point defenseman any year. That would be amazing. Whether they're playing first line or third line minutes or, first power play, second power play, whether they're on the penalty kill or not, it doesn't matter. This is a valuable asset to any team. It's whether they can be a true franchise defenseman. And I originally, I really, really think that Leighton Hutson can be a franchise defenseman. And if the Montreal Canadiens believe this too, it means they got an absolute steal of a contract. If they don't believe this, and they believe that Dobson will be the number one guy going forward, they have a great 1-2 punch that are both paid reasonable money, especially with the cap going up. For me, this is a great contract, and I have no complaints if I was a Montreal Canadiens fan. As a Leafs fan, I'm a little bit upset because I know this is a great play they locked up for a reasonable amount of money, but I think there's something that they know that we don't, and I think there's a reason why he's getting paid less than Dobson. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Obviously, it's a shorter video. It's a quick reactionary video to the contract extension, but I really hope that this works out for Hutson. I'm actually a fan of his. I'm not the biggest fan of Montreal Canadiens, but I do like Leighton Hutson. I think he's a great player, and I think he has a great career going forward. Let me know what you think about this player as a whole. Let me know my take on it. What do you think about what I said? And what do you think about the overall situation of Montreal Canadiens? I think they're in a great spot. Anyways, drop a like on the video. Comment on your thoughts, like I said. And obviously, subscriptions always help. They boost me in the algorithm. I really appreciate that. So, thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of the Thanksgiving. And take care.